The NBA Finals now have Indiana in front. The Twins win, plus Matt Larsen joins us on what's going to happen with NDSU and the House settlement. Hot Mic begins right now.
Hot Mic with Dom Izzo.
Really? Really, Dom?
No.
I like what Dom's doing.
Okay.
Dom Izzo.
Jeez, come on, Dom. What do you think I am, a magician?
Yeah, I'm fired up, Dom. What else could I say?
Absolutely. I was great to get on the field, and then Dom came up to me, and I'm trying to walk away from me. I just wanted to enjoy myself out there.
Hot Mic.
Great job.
There's got to be some kind of intelligent question about something.
Coach Dom Izzo, WDAY in Fargo, North Dakota.
Can you give me a layup or something?
Hot Mic. Presented by Northwestern Mutual.
That program is second to none.
On the networks of WDAY.
You know, if it's not about sports, I find it very hard to concentrate.
Here's Dom Izzo.
Good Thursday morning. Welcome to the Do We Know Anything edition of Hot Mic on WDAY Extra. KSFL, good morning in Sioux Falls, KNBN in Rapid City, and Inforum.com. June the 12th is here. We mentioned off the top, pretty good basketball game last night. We got game 4 of the Stanley Cup Final later today. The Twins put together a pretty good outing. Good stuff going on at track. We're a day closer to the College World Series, getting ready for that. It starts tomorrow in Omaha. But the biggest thing we've talked about on this program, basically since, Friday night at 8 o'clock, why wouldn't anything in college athletics be signed off at 8 o'clock on a Friday night, was the judge approving the House versus NCAA settlement. And now in the aftermath of that, what is going to happen? And pretty pumped to have our first guest on, who's just got back from meeting with about 100 of his colleagues in Florida to try and figure out this mess. Matt Larsen joins us right off the hop, North Dakota State Athletic Director, back from I have to wonder, how was it contentious, this convention? What was the sense meeting with your colleagues and brethren in Florida the last few days?
I don't know, contentious. There's definitely some angst, I think, from a lot of folks, probably your non-A4 folks. I think there's some angst, and especially since going into there was this quick turnaround time. The original date to have to opt in or opt out, or at least designate where your position was July 15th. And so it signed off on basically a week before. So pretty big decision for institutions to make. And you had 7 days to make it. You still didn't have all the information at the ready to be able to make a really good decision. And so so there was some angst from that standpoint. I do think the NCAA and the A4 conferences heard that loud and clear. And I'm sure we'll touch on the extension that was granted here earlier this week.
Well, let's just get right to it. You're going to announce on our show, is NDSU going to opt into the House settlement?
No, I want to get all the information and to be able to make the best decision possible for NDSU. So the good thing is the deadline to opt in now is June 30th. So it does buy us some time. And when I say buy us some time, is to really, we're going to get an FAQ from the NCAA, because there are, for the most part, the House settlement as originally put together, things we heard about probably 3 and 4 months ago, for the most part, is intact. There is a new element that I think is probably giving a lot of, I would call mid-major non-A4 institutions kind of a pause of, hey, maybe we do look at least that we're initially looking at opting out, the potential of opting in, and that's the grandfathering of rosters. I think the biggest angst for a lot of mid-majors who, are on schools where enrollments are critical and really important, having to trim down to a roster cap number, I think was a challenge financially, could be a challenge from a Title IX perspective. And so now the grandfathering gives essentially schools probably a 3 to 4 year, at least planning phase to have to get down to those hard roster caps.
Matt, the nitty gritty of this is really hard to follow, even for me, and I'm in it. You do it every day. For the average fan, donor, how often is this a topic that is brought up when you've been out fundraising or just out, visiting? Is this something that is more spoken about that I think of, or is this going over people's heads and, hey, we want to see the athletes on the field?
I think when it comes up in our circles with donors and fans at NDSU, I think it comes up in the vein of, we have to fix NIL and we have to fix the transfer portal. And then that spills over into, okay, well, here's where we are at the house settlement.
Right.
This is what it could mean for us moving forward. depending on direction we go. And what I would say to fans is, whether and same thing I've told our coaches. Originally, we were thinking about not opting in. For me, it's all about the institution, where you are, what your level of support is, regardless of whether you're opting in or opting out. And we felt really strongly initially about opting out because of the things we currently are doing financially, and resources to support our student athletes are far and above what a lot of our peer institutions are doing, even if they plan on opting in. And so you can be successful either way. There's a little bit of a moniker of, well, if you're not opting in, you're not investing in your student athletes. Well, that couldn't be further from the truth here at NDSU. So I think regardless of which direction we go, we've shared this with donors, is we have an opportunity to continue to grow our program, be successful, compete for championships at a high level. It's just, at the end of the day, what's the mechanism that makes the most sense for us for the more immediate future.
Matt, I look at it, Montana State, a peer institution of yours on the football field, has opted in. If they decide on football that they want a scholarship 80, to me, that would seem as a decided disadvantage for you if you do not opt in and you're still at 63. And I know you don't want to be in that spot. Is that a clearest reason why, if we're going to be on the field and one team has 80 scholarships and we're still at 63, that might be the clearest indication for a reason to opt in?
Yeah, I mean, and I think those would be reasons why I think we could down the road head that way. I mean, the nice thing about this is you have an opportunity every year to adjust your status if you choose to. So let's say hypothetically NDSU was to opt out this year, your scenario comes to fruition, schools are starting to increase scholarships at the FCS level, we would have the opportunity then next year to then opt in. But the only thing I would say is and that's why initially our idea of where we're leaning towards opting out is, I think across most FCS programs, conferences, one, the lack of funding to be able to significantly increase football scholarships, the Title IX issues that would present by all of a sudden adding another 10, 15 scholarships. And so you've seen some conferences have come out and said, hey, we're going to keep it capped at 65. Some haven't come out with that yet, but I think the flexibility now of, instead of having, you still have 63 scholarships, instead of being capped at 85 counters, you can actually go up to 105 counters.
Right.
So if you want, you can split up that 63 even greater than maybe you currently are. But that would be something that I think would probably give us some concern if you did see, if we opted out and you saw programs adding a significant amount of scholarships, because again, we would still have the opportunity through third parties to still financially support walk-ons, even though they're not a scholarship. So those opportunities would still be present, and we'd have the opportunity to do that. But yeah, this will be, my guess is in a lot of ways, we're going to look at this annually and just see where we sit. Do we feel comfortable what we can provide financially, and be very, very competitive against other institutions, whether they opt in or not?
If I heard correctly, the Valley ADs are set to meet on that about a potential scholarship cap for the conference. Is that accurate?
We do. Monday we have ADs and presidents meetings, and so that'll definitely be a topic of conversation, because I think right now the Valley institutions are probably split.
There's no doubt on that. Yeah.
Where it's easier that when you have the CAA basically came out and said we're all in, it's easier to put some things in place. So we'll see. I mean, it'll be good conversations. We'll get a chance to hopefully have some honesty and transparency from our group, which I would anticipate in terms of where people are, what are they thinking, and then what does that mean for the league?
Would that give you better guidance out of that and feeling of what you want to do out of that meeting?
I think so. I mean, again, that's where I think getting information from the NCAA and just making sure all the things that how we understand it currently, whether you opt in or opt out, hold true. And then, I think getting some feedback from peer institutions, conference institutions, in terms of what are they thinking, that both of those could influence where we ultimately end up.
All right. I really appreciate you doing this, because there's a lot of layers to this, and I was trying to explain to our viewers the best I could over the last handful of days. And I know you're still trying to get answers as well. The first question I got Monday, Matt, was, if you do opt in, where does this $20.5 million for revenue sharing come from? And I know it's not for every school. I don't believe North Dakota State is going to get to that level. So can you answer that? Where does the $20.5 million come from?
So essentially the number $20.5 million, that came from basically 22% of certain 22% of the average revenues from Power Four conferences, and there's certain revenues that are pulled out that they apply that 22% to. So that number for year one, it's 20.5 million. They'll apply that same math. Next year, it'll probably go up to 21 and a half, whatever it is. So institutions, now what goes into that cap? If you're opting in now, remember there's roster caps, but there's no longer any scholarship minimums.
Right.
So in baseball, if I want to go from 11.7 scholarships to now I have 34 people on the roster and I want to scholarship all of them, from 11.7 to 34, that money counts towards that $20.5 million cap.
Okay.
If I want to give more than $5,980 in Alston to X amount of student athletes, the difference between the original cap and whatever I'm giving them goes towards the $20.5 million cap. And then the biggest piece is being able to pay student athletes directly for their NIL. So Dom, you're a great athlete. You're our starting quarterback at NDSU or Omaha or Alabama, whoever. I think you're worth $1 million. I can give you $1 million. That fits under the cap. So those are really the three biggest elements. Schools that either are under the cap or max at the cap, student athletes have opportunities to earn third-party NIL. So you may see some schools still maintain a collective. There's still opportunities for a student athlete in the local community to go out and sign an NIL deal. The biggest difference here is there is a clearinghouse now for all third-party NIL payments. So if you opt in or if you opt out, any third-party collectives, local community relationships, all that are in excess of $600 have to go through this clearinghouse and either get approved, denied, there's an appeal process, etc. So there's that new layer. Now, whether you opt in or opt out, all student athletes have the responsibility. They have to register those through this new clearinghouse.
That's no matter what. If you're opting in or out, if it's above $600 for an NIL deal, it's got to go through the clearinghouse. For you to be able to pay directly, do you envision? Is it maybe raising ticket prices? Is it finding other sources of revenue to pay the athletes?
Well, I think mid-majors, where if we had all this extra money laying around, we'd probably already be doing stuff with it, right? So I think mid-majors on every campus are really challenged with exactly what you're talking about. Are there new revenue streams, whether it's through, external revenues? Yeah. Is it ticket prices? Is it a talent fee on top of your tickets? Is it additional fundraising, going back to donors and saying, we need your help? Yeah. Or what I think a lot of mid-majors are doing, and I think why you're seeing a lot of mid-major non-A4s opt in is because their collectives have not been able to be successful. They don't have as passionate a fan base as we're fortunate to have. And so really the only way for them to really drive NIL is they have to bring it in-house, and they have to probably take a really hard look at their expenses. And I think what you're probably going to see, and this has been the fear, I think, of a lot of people in college sports, is does that now start to pull away on opportunities for student athletes for other sports? So basically, if we think we have to do X in NIL and we can't raise it all externally, well, then we're going to have to reallocate internally. And what does that mean for the sports that we currently sponsor? Does the number change? Does the level of investment in those programs change? And so I think from a mid-major standpoint, those are the real challenges that I think people are having on campus. And yeah, where is that money coming from? It's not coming from a lucrative TV contract, right? So where are those resources coming from? And if we can't do it all externally, we're going to have to reallocate from inside if we want to be competitive in X, Y, and Z sports.
One last thing for Matt, then we'll break. We got him for a few more minutes after that. The other question that I got often and tried to explain on Monday was the Backpay part of this. And this is for every Division I school, if I understand correctly, that no matter what, how is it over 200,000, 300,000 that North Dakota State will have to pay for Backpay? That's non-negotiable whether you're in or out.
Correct. Yeah. So just reminders for everybody the Backpay is a $2.65 billion Backpay settlement amount. NCAA is going to pay 1.1 billion of that, and then the 1.65 is broken up kind of consistent with how the revenue distribution model works in college athletics. So essentially every institution, whether you're autonomy 5 or mid-major, whatever, you have a role in paying the back payments, and we don't get an invoice. It's basically we get revenue distribution from the NCAA
Right.
in a number of categories: sports sponsorship, grant and aids, academic enhancement, those things. Those are going to be reduced by whatever our percentage is. And so, yeah, I mean, I would say for the next 10 years, that's probably on average somewhere between $250,000 and $350,000. Because the other piece too is every conference also is getting a reduction.
Yep.
And we're fortunate in the summer league because of our basketball tournament, because of some of the other things that Josh Fenton and the staff do, is we distribute money back to our institutions. And so there's going to be probably a little bit of a reduction there too. So that's when I say 250 to 350. That range there is, and at a level for us, that's, I think most mid majors would say that's significant. That's a couple of positions, that's some scholarships, that's travel, that's recruiting, that's whatever it might be.
Is that a potential if to do that you may not fill positions that are open because of the amount of money you have to pay in?
Yeah, I mean, I think those are all the things that everybody's looking at.
Oh.
We've always tried, anytime we've had a budget reduction, we've always tried as best to hold our teams harmless. You don't want it to impact our student athletes directly and impact their ability to be successful. But I would also argue we're not overflowing with staff here either. And so if you start pulling back some way, shape, or form, that's going to indirectly or directly affect our student athletes, our ability to be successful. And so, yeah, I think we're looking at all of those things, and you try to, what's the path of least resistance where it's going to have the least impact on our ability to be successful in the experience that our kids are having here.
All right, let's break. We got a couple more minutes with Matt. We'll do that now and then come back and try and follow up this, because there's about 8 other topics we want to get to here regarding this. We're just getting started on Hot Mic on a Thursday morning. We're back on WDAY Extra, Inforum.com right after this. Welcome back, everybody. NDSU Athletic Director Matt Larsen joining us right off the hop, talking on the House settlement implications that it can have for North Dakota State, which is just a fun topic to talk about. Email comes in to ask you, Matt, what are the implications of opting in, but your conference caps scholarships?
Benefits or advantages are some of those donations now can be tax deductible, whereas, to your collective, they're not. Other benefits are you can more just directly control how you manage your NIL. You can do it through increased Alston payments. You can do it through direct payments of NIL. And so that's the thing. And, we were talking offline a little, Dom, is there's pros and cons really to both sides, depending on, and those pros and cons don't impact every institution the same way, just based on how you're constructed and all of those things. So it is a little bit of a puzzle. But there's pros and cons, honestly, to both. There really are. And, and like I said, I don't think there's a lot of FCS conferences that I've heard of, or even mid-majors, when you're talking about opting in, are doing it so they can add more scholarships, because that really does impact Title IX at our level in a big way. I think they're really looking at, how do I control NIL more internally and not have to rely on external resources, because a lot of places, they're not there. And so how do I do that internally?
Just so I understand as well, if you were to go and say, let's add 12 more football scholarships, you had to have 12 more in women's sports then, correct?
Technically, yes and no. It depends on, again, there's 3 prongs to Title IX compliance. And so the first one's proportionality. The second one is interests and abilities. And the third one is third is interests and abilities. And so it really depends on where you fall. But optically, there's an issue if all of a sudden you're adding a ton of male scholarships and not female. And so there is a balance to that, absolutely, in terms of where your funding and support is going towards, and what gender and what is the enrollment breakdown between men and women. So there's a lot of variables there too. So it's not a real easy one for one. It really depends on where you're complying with Title IX.
I want to ask you about one of your favorite events. Starts tomorrow in Omaha in the College World Series, and you were at Stony Brook when they made it to Omaha, and we got Coastal Carolina, who I know who's no Cinderella because they won the thing a few years ago, but Murray State is there. Is that how much of that, to me, Matt, it seems like, okay, well, the quote unquote, the Cinderellas can still do it in this day and age where, I mean, baseball is not immune. Obviously, North Dakota State's baseball team got ravaged in the portal after making it to the NCAA tournament. Is that a reminder that there are still runs that can be made by teams that aren't spending gobs of money?
I do. And here's why I would say that. I mean, and you actually saw more than any other time I remember. You also not only that who's in the College World Series, but the amount of top seeds in their regionals that got out. The number 1 seed, the number 2 seed. I mean, there was a lot that went down early on. And again, I still think there's great value. And I talked to our coaches about being able to balance. Yes, we need to financially support our student athletes, but it's still about finding the right type of person that wants to be here, that where it's bigger than the individual, wants to be part of a team and play for something. And I think at a lot of these larger schools, we've seen it in football, you have some really expensive rosters that aren't very good. They're not good football teams, or they're not good baseball teams because there's a ton of individuals there that are really out for my next payday. And so I do think that there's still an opportunity because there's really good athletics at our level. I mean, there's really good athletics and student athletes who are going to go on and do some great things. But when you can come together as a team, that's a lot more powerful than some really talented individuals sometimes. And so I do think there's opportunity down the road to see that.
A couple other topics I wanted to hit on. We had Kyle Grooms on the show last week, who, by the way, I had no idea you guys were basically job hunting when he was up here for the Abilene Christian game. I know he was talking to you before the game. You're on the hiring committee on this. Can you explain for people how big of an impact is he going to have on a maybe day-to-day basis now in the Missouri Valley Football Conference?
I think a big one. And I've gotten to work with Kyle a little bit when I was on the FCS committee and we were doing conference monitoring. I talked to Kyle a bunch about the WAC or the United Conference and just their institute. So I got to know him really well, and then I've seen him at championships and those things. So he's really talented. And he's basically been doing the job for the last X number of years too. But I think the biggest thing, especially we have a little bit of unique setup moving forward, but I think there's a lot of potential positives that come with that, is when you have Jeff Jackson as the commissioner of the Missouri Valley Conference and of the Missouri Valley Football Conference, Josh Fenton, commissioner of the Summit League, is the executive advisor. Really having that person that day to day is going to manage all football operations, and that's going to be Kyle. So he'll have really strong relationships with coaches. He'll be the first line of communication for them. Probably same with ADs to a certain extent. And really where we've challenged him in that position is, how do we grow the brand of the Valley? How do we grow some things? And we're leaders in the space on the field. How do we do it from a conference perspective too? And so I think and you saw the other day we announced we're doing an in-person media day in July down in Sioux Falls. So I think that's just a first step of where we're really going to challenge him to do a lot of those things. And like I said, he's done those before. And so I think it's going to be a really positive impact in a lot of ways, but he's got a lot on his plate in terms of managing officials and scheduling and branding. But we're also providing greater resources and support from the Missouri Valley Conference and the Summit League to really kind of come together and lift up the football league, which I think will be good.
So he's coming from the WAC. Does that mean you guys are going to go grab a couple WAC teams then for the Summit of the Missouri Valley Conference? Two last.
We got too much other stuff going on.
Well,
my brain can only hold so much.
Well, because everyone has brought up as well. All right, well, if they opt in, does that make the Bison more appealing to FBS conferences? Which I mean, that's a whole other road we could go down. But I guess I'll ask: does it? From what your knowledge of that, if you're part of that, if you're in, does that make you more on the table for potential realignment?
I guess I'd go back to what I said earlier. To me, it still comes down to, you could have a school that's opting in and they have 4,000 people at their football games and they're really not revenue sharing with their student athletes. And so to me, it's the full picture of what North Dakota State provides: our level of competition, our national brand, our fan base, our ability to generate revenue to support our program. To me, those are the real determiners, whether we're opting in or opting out. To me, now, a lot of FBS conferences, group of 6, I'm sure are opting in as a league. And so if that opportunity presented, then we would have to revisit. If we're not opting in at that time, we'd have to revisit that. But I personally would be shocked if somebody saw that as a deterrent, because again, to me, it's let's look at NDSU as the full package. And boy, oh boy, I think I'd put us up against anybody in the country.
12 games going to happen. I know that's supposed to get signed off here for FCS starting in 2026 from what you know.
I mean, there's a ton of support. I would be shocked if it doesn't, but I mean, I guess it's not done until it's done, but I do think there's plenty of support behind it for a lot of reasons. And, from scheduling flexibility to additional opportunities, better non-conference matchup. I think there's just a lot of being able to showcase FCS on an opening. So I think there's a lot of reasons where it makes sense.
Last thing for, and I really appreciate you doing this. North Dakota State, when you were first out on cost of attendance, you got in terms of FCS, I remember you telling me we want to lead the way on that. If you decide to opt in, how big a deal is that to lead the way for maybe the other Dakota schools that we're going to be out in front on this because we think it's important to do?
I mean, I think we are a leader. I think when you're down at NACDA, I think people do look to what is North Dakota State doing, whether it's opting in or if it's other things. And that's a credit to our staff. I think we have positioned our program in a really good place. Again, what I would say to those schools is you got to do what's best for you. And again, opting in may make sense for us, may not make sense for another Valley school or an FCS school. Us opting out may make perfect sense for us, but may not make sense for somebody else. So again, I think opting in or opting out is just a moniker. It doesn't, you can still accomplish both things by either or move your program forward, whether you opt in or opt out. So that's the only thing I would say is I think this really is a decision that is very institutional dependent and what makes the most sense for you.
This is a lot to cover. I really appreciate you doing this. I know you earned a vacation on this, and I hope you enjoy it. You get some peace out of this, but we'll do this again once the decision is made, okay?
No, that sounds great. I'd appreciate it.
Thanks, Matt.
All right, Dom, appreciate it.
Matt
Thanks.
Larsen, North Dakota State Athletic Director, join us right off the hop here to start Hot Mike. I hope that was as helpful as it was for me. I don't know if we got any more answers that we were looking for, but at least we now know from their perspective where we're at. And as we were reported on the show yesterday, they have a full 2 weeks to decide. I think a lot could come out of that. The ADs meeting on Monday, presidents and AD meeting on what they want to do. All right, we'll break. We'll go through our normal show routine and get us started here on a busy Thursday. Back on Hot Mike on WDAY Extra, KSFL, KMBN, and Inforum.com right after this.